We're going to get started here. My name is Dr. John Yost. This is Dr. Tracy Masterson. This session is being taped, so if you want to view it, you can view it online. It's going to be in high definition. Just to warn you, I've been taped in high definition before. It makes me look older, heavier, balder, so keep that in mind.
He's so vain.
If you happen to watch it. Dr. Masterson will speak first. Dr. Masterson is a clinical psychologist in our department. She's actually had an interesting path to clinical psychology. She started out in medical school after, how many years of medical school were you?
Like a year and a half,
okay,
yeah.
A year and a half. She decided she didn't want to be a physician and she wanted to be a clinical psychologist, so she switched. But I think that brings a lot to our department and what Dr. Masterson can offer us. She also just published a book, and so if we have time at the end, maybe she can tell us a little about that.
Book signing, no.
Dr. Masterson will begin today's presentation.
Absolutely. Welcome, everybody. I maybe saw some of you. I was unfortunate on the big screen, but nice to see you guys in a smaller setting. This is meant, we're going to give you an overview of kind of the psych major and the core, but at the same time, this is meant to be informal, and if you have any questions or comments, we're happy to answer them in the midst of this. I'm a pretty informal presenter, so please feel free. I love our department, our major. It's a great program. We are a relatively large major, and I think that really gives us some advantages. We get a lot of resources. Our department itself is gorgeous in terms of doing psychological research, doing psychological observations. It's really state of the art from that capacity, and there's something about sometimes the place where you hang your hat can really make you feel it's a real positive place to be, and it's very lots of good resources, and I think that really helps in addition to kind of like the core of our major. So welcome. And again, the other thing is we have a nice mix in our department of a couple clinicians, which is sometimes hard to find in an academic department. A lot of students major in psychology because they're interested in going into counseling or therapy or becoming a clinical psychologist or neuropsychologist. And it's nice that we have several people in our department, Dr. Ben-Porath, Dr. Rainey, and myself, who are all clinicians. And I think that's really advantageous because I can give some really good advice. I do research of a clinical nature, and that's really advantageous. A lot of times, most people in an academic setting are more individuals who do more experimental psychology, so that's kind of a nice advantage. Okay, so yeah, there's us.
Let me just chime in a little bit on that point. If you look at most academic departments, they're made up of people who do experimental psychology. I'm a social psychologist, which falls under experimental. Most students, when they pursue psychology and psychology degrees, they are interested in clinical or counseling. So we purposely, slotted faculty positions for clinical psychologists. So as Dr. Masterson mentioned, we do have 3 clinical psychologists on our faculty.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of the child and adolescent person, and then Dr. Ben-Porath and Dr. Rainey are the adult folks, so it's kind of nice too. And the other great thing, just as another aside, we'll eventually get to this, I promise, is that we have a counseling program, a master's program in counseling, school psychology, and school counseling right across the way. And so that's kind of nice too, that even if perhaps the student may not want to go here for that, but at least they can go and observe some of the classes there in the graduate program as it gets closer to graduation. So some of that has been a really nice asset for me to be able to refer them over there and to talk to some students that are currently in graduate school in those areas. So I think that's helpful because frankly, if you are interested in clinical things, there's a lot of options for our students, especially at the master's level, and sometimes trying to discern which one of those options you want to do becomes a Sophie's choice for students, and so it's really nice to go over there. Let's introduce, are they all here, our student volunteers. We have Caitlin Holliday, Bridges Sayers, Nicole Simonovic, and Bryant Stone.
Nicole and Bryant
are here today. And they're wonderful, wonderful students. I can't believe that they're going to be graduating. I feel like I'm going to lose my mind.
We'll give you an opportunity to ask them questions later. We'll even leave the room and shut off the camera if you want to get some
True, no, and they're great.
information.
We have a great department and a great group of students in our department. So our new integrative core, I'm sure you've heard some about this or have done some research with this. It was something that certainly didn't begin without a lot of thought and preparation, and so it got launched this past year. So you were not the guinea pigs, which is also really nice, but it's been going very well. Initiated fall of 2015, So within the major, there's 40 to 49 credit hours required, but there's a lot of different ways to do that, and we'll talk about the different tracks. So what one student, if you have an interest, say, in neuroscience, there's a nice track for that. There's going to be a more clinical mental health track, a child track, all different forensic psychology track. So that will kind of help you fine-tune what you're looking for. But at the same time, some of my students, just based on perhaps they switched majors when they decided to be a psych major their junior year. You can also do more of a generalist type of track, and I think that's really helpful as well in case you can kind of carve out your own as long as you're kind of meeting the requirements that we have. So we're really trying to help you guys get skills developed in your early college career. The other thing, of course, you're not just doing all psych. So there's a really nice, you're taking classes in philosophy, perhaps in religion, foreign languages, other things that are going to really impact what you bring into your classroom in Psych 101 or in your My Development classes that you might be taking with me. And it's certainly going to provide opportunities for you to see how other disciplines, you can look at a problem from multiple perspectives and really see that. And I think that's such an advantage to our students. So often we'll be having a class discussion. I'm a pretty discussion-oriented type of professor. And I really appreciate when students bring in material or things that they've learned in another course. It's just so beneficial. And I'm in the process, I'll tell you about one of the linked courses I'm thinking of developing probably for fall 2017, and it's really exciting. I mean, it's exciting for you guys as someone who's going to be potentially taking some of these linked courses, but I think for me and some of the professors, it's very exciting too that you kind of get to teach a course with another professor. It kind of renews something that maybe you've been teaching for 5 years. You change it up, you evolve it, and I think that's really an exciting place to be on this campus when some of that stuff is happening. I've certainly found that when I was laughing when we're doing these linked courses, as I'll talk a little bit about, it reminds me of like academics, like dating. Like, who do I want to partner up with? I'm married, so I don't have dating in my real world anymore, but this is my academic dating to live vicariously through my job. I love my husband, I'm happy, I'm just saying. So some of the things that we're looking at in the new core, it's really important to have those foundational competencies. And so for instance, you're going to have foundational competencies in writing and written expression, foundational competencies in oral expression and speech, things like that, foundational competencies in mathematics. So that's really a nice place to be. For some students, if they're coming in at a more advanced level in some of those areas, they don't need to take as many of those courses, for instance, or same thing with the foreign language. So there's some flexibility that really wasn't in our old core to say, look, if you've already met or attained some of these competencies, you have less, things to do in that area. So obviously a language study is another thing important in a global world to have exposure to a foreign language. And then these integrated, like I was telling you guys about, these linked courses. And so there's different links. There's these three main areas of linkages. So engaging the global community, engaging the natural world, and engaging the human experience. So as an example, I was just looking, I actually put it up last night, but it didn't get updated in time. Our ghost is here. An example in the Examining the Human Experience, one of the classes that's offered in this fall coming up is looking at Japanese literature in combination with the history of Japan. And so kind of you can see where there's some advantage to that by understanding the history of Japan, of which I really have no knowledge, I will be honest. So there's so many of these classes I would like to take. But understanding that is going to help your understanding of the literature component of the other course. So they take them at the same time, and the teachers are the professors are trying to develop assignments that are going to be kind of beneficial to both sides. It's a really, I think, innovative and an exciting academic experience. So for me, a class that I'm thinking about doing and developing with my colleague in the Department of History, right? You wouldn't really put psychology and history together, but here at John Carroll we do, is engaging the global community. And so for me, it's the course that we're thinking about developing is called The Global Child. And so looking at development, which I teach child development and adolescent development, but looking at it, how does that process happen in the context of the broader setting, in the broader political landscape, in the history of all of these different countries and parts of the world? How does that development change when you're not in a developing country, when you're in a developing country? Right? That's a different experience. And so again, for me, it's exciting because I get to kind of do a little bit more research and add to my curriculum in that area for my students. And so I think it's making me a better faculty member by doing some of these things. And again, as Father Niehoff was talking about in the presentation you just saw, getting some rooting in Jesuit heritage. Again, it doesn't necessarily mean you need to take Catholic studies. It's taking perhaps a theology course in an area you're interested in. It's taking some philosophy classes to really help you kind of look at knowing about knowing and thinking about thinking and all of those good things. So,
as an example, I just submitted for approval my Psychology of Prejudice class as a Jesuit heritage class because a big component of that is social justice. So Psychology of Prejudice directly addresses social justice. So that would be an example of
That's
another
good.
type of Jesuit heritage class that's not necessarily theology.
it's a good example. So it kind of gives, again, some freedom for you to, as much as there's lots of things you need to do in the core, there's lots of, I think, flexibility within that to get the experience that you're looking for and what you're excited about, which I think is great. Okay. So within the psychology major, one thing I think that distinguishes John Carroll, and it's not just by distinction, it's not just we have a Bachelor of Science, we truly have a Bachelor of Science. Most are, I don't know what the breakdown is across universities, but oftentimes most are Bachelor of Arts that you're going to get when you graduate with a psychology degree. We're also in the science building, we're in the Dolan Science Center, and there's a reason. We prioritize the science of psychology. We prioritize, experimental research and design. We prioritize research-based clinical interventions, and that's a really great thing that I think we're all very proud of. We've just changed our name to the Department of Psychological Science from just the Department of Psychology. Sometimes I get tripped up on that. I still say I'm in the Department of Psychology, but there's a reason and rationale for that, and I think there's an advantage to that. So we really focus on research, career development. There are tons. I call myself, frankly, the internship lady half the time. I did my postdoctoral work here in Cleveland at the Cleveland Clinic, and so I have a tremendous amount of contacts within a lot of clinical landscapes here, and Dr. Ben Porath, very similar. And so we have internships at the Cleveland Clinic, at the Monarch Center for Autism, the Belfair Foster Care internship, and tons and tons more of opportunities for students to examine what they like. And for me, I was a bio major, like I said, I was in medical school, so I kind of made this leap of faith without exploring as much as I probably should have these experiences. And I think some of the experiences my students get are experiences I didn't get until I was well into my doctoral training. And so that's a great experience to be able to say, I know this is what I want to do. I'm competitive to get into these graduate programs because I've done all these things. So that's really great. I know you guys, I think Nicole especially, and actually Brian's doing one of my internships this summer, I believe, and Nicole has done them in the past as well. And I think that's put them at a distinct advantage for their goals. Maybe you should talk about the research methods since you do.
I'll take that.
Quickly. Switch a little, yeah.
So as Dr. Masterson mentioned, that it is a Bachelor of Science degree, and what we purposely designed the major so that it is based on science, it is based on the scientific method. All students are required to take experimental design and analysis. And what makes our course unique relative to other universities is the students actually conduct the research. In many other places, what students do is they might design a research project as if they were going to run it, but they never actually take the next step. In our major, it's required that all students do conduct research. In the experimental design and analysis class, if you look in the bulletin, it's Psych 301. They work in groups. Usually it's groups of 3 to 4 students. They agree on a project, and then they design the study. They actually have to go through the IRB process. IRB stands for Institutional Review Board, which guarantees that the study is an ethical study, that the participants in the study are under no form of psychological or physical risk. And that's quite an arduous process. Usually takes a few weeks, and it's reviewed by multiple experts on campus, as well as people who are not on campus, but they are experts in the areas of research. If you happen to come to the tours after lunch, the psych department's on the 3rd floor, this side over here. You'll see posters in the hallway, and those posters, most of those posters are posters from our experimental design and analysis classes. For students who are interested in pursuing more research, they can take advanced research methods. I teach advanced research methods. This semester I have 9 students in the class. Each of those students are doing an independent research project. So they go from doing a group project, and then that's required that they're in that class. For the advanced research methods class, that's an optional class. Students interested in graduate school many times take this. They conduct their own research project, and then after they finish that, they can then do independent research. And this is a one-on-one research experience with faculty members. Nicole, you're on your second independent research?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Yeah, if students who get started in the process earlier, they can do multiple independent research projects. Again, the student sits down with the professor, they agree on a topic. I actually have the students create the syllabus, and they set the deadlines for themselves. We meet as necessary. If students want to meet every week, we can meet every week. If students want to meet just as needed, that's when we meet.
A lot of us do them. I'm doing one now. I do one almost every semester, it feels like. So and then usually with those types of things, the expectation is that you're going to present it at local and national or regional conferences, and that's, it's a really nice progression, especially for the student who wants to go on into research or wants to get into their, a doctoral program. It's necessary, and we have the capabilities to do those things.
Some students end up publishing their independent research. I think you've co-authored student publications. So it's a good opportunity for students to have professional experience while an undergraduate. Most students really don't do those things until they're in graduate school. So we really try to give them the heavy research experience. For those who really want it, they can have it, but we have a minimal requirement of at least doing the experimental design and analysis, and that justifies the Bachelor of Science degree. The last thing we have on there is academic rigor. As a department, we feel that we do a really good job educating the students. The psychology core, Dr. Masterson was mentioning the university core. The psychology core we've broken into 4 areas, and students have to take at least one course from each of those areas. We also have additional lab courses. Sensation and perception is a lab course. Learning and behavior is a lab course. Human cognition is a lab course. And students are learning in the classroom as well as engaging in laboratory exercises. We cover all major areas of psychology in our coursework, and upon graduation, for students, in order to graduate, they have to pass what is called the major field test. This is created by ETS, the same people who do the SAT and the GRE. It's given nationwide to graduating psychology majors. Our students typically score in the 75th to 90th percentile nationwide. So we feel that we're doing a good job, and I think the data demonstrate that our students are understanding what they're being taught. In terms of the major requirements, all students take introductory psychology and experimental design and analysis. Each student will take one course from each of the 4 groupings. And then there are 6 electives. These are just general courses. For example, my psychology of prejudice class is not part of the psych core, but many students take it, and it ends up, they get elective credit within psychology for that. We also have tracks within the department. The first thing we have, we call them concentrations now. The concentration, we have an interdisciplinary concentration, which is neuroscience. And I'd like to mention that this program's been in place since the late 1970s, and it is probably the first, if not the first, one of the first neuroscience programs for an undergraduate-only institution. We also have master's program, but we don't have PhD programs. Neuroscience programs really took off in institutions that grant PhDs. We were way ahead of the curve in terms of institutions that are mainly undergraduate institutions. Dr. Murphy in psychology, Dr. Weideman in biology head this. They created this program in the late 70s, and the program's still going very strong. Towards the end of our presentation, you'll see a slide that shows where some of our students are going in terms of doctoral programs, and you'll see several examples of neuroscience programs there. We also have concentrations within this psychological science major. General concentration, that's just general psych. Students who really, want a psych science major, but they're not really sure where they want to go with it. We have many students taking that. We also have child and family studies, forensic psychology track, an eating disorders track, industrial organizational track, and mental health track.
An IO, industrial organizational track, is it's business related, so it's trying to help like improve productivity, motivation, interview skills in kind of industrial settings or business-like settings. So it's really interesting that we have this, and then when we have such a strong business school. So Dr. Beth Martin runs that track, and then she also kind of coordinates the fifth-year MBA program. So it's kind of a nice meeting of that minds if you're interested. And she has some really pretty outstanding internship and practicum experiences for her students that are, again, pretty amazing. So if that's something you're interested in, it's a little bit more of a niche, but I think it's worth kind of being educated about because it is a really interesting field and has, good potential in terms of jobs and pay. So it's an interesting.
And if you're asking yourself, what are these concentrations, what are these tracks involved? Really what we're doing, it doesn't change the major. All students have to fulfill the major requirements. What it does is it packages courses within the major, and some of the concentrations have courses outside the major. So if you're going to graduate as a psych major with one of these concentrations, you may have taken, for example, in the industrial organizational track, 2 or 3 classes in business that might be related to industrial organizational psychology. In the forensic track, are there courses outside? Do you know? I'm trying to think of things that.
Soch, and they're doing. I think they do some actually, perhaps in even chem with that class.
Okay.
It's interesting.
So the faculty members who have created these tracks, what they do is they look across campus for courses that are relevant for students who are interested in this topic area. Students are a psych science major, first off. They're going to have their BS degree in psychology. The concentration just demonstrates that they've taken classes in a specific area. And so way of thinking of it, it's kind of pre-packaging all the classes on campus that would be relevant to a certain topic. But it's all done within the psych science major. So each track or concentration has its own faculty advisor. In terms of academic advisors, in general, not just for those who are in specific tracks, what we do is we help students plan their academic careers. And we also, keep their minds open to research opportunities and internship opportunities. Some tracks require that students do an internship. The mental health services track requires, is it 2?
1.
1, okay. 1 practicum. Industrial organization also requires a practicum. And then, again, students are welcome to get internship credit in the other tracks or even as a general psych major.
So if, say, a student does an internship with me, oftentimes there's an upper level 400, it's like 480 level psych credit that they can get for that as like an elective, because they're doing an immense amount of work. So for instance, my students that are placed at Monarch, they're in there for 6 hours, and the cool thing, just I'll plug Monarch a little bit, the neat thing about that internship is that there's all of these different tracks. So there's like a speech and language pathology track, there's an occupational therapy track, there's an art therapy track, there's a behavioral track, and a special ed track. So it's kind of neat for them to get that exposure, and then they're doing a lot of work. I have some academic kind of reflective experiences for them to do to get that credit, but that's a really nice advantage. The other thing, going back to the academic advisor piece, so I'm in the throes of it right now, because every semester their advisor or your student to be advisors will need to meet with you to release you to register for your next set of classes. That's such an important piece. I mean, it's chaotic. I'm like trying to say all these people, I feel like I'm talking 10 miles a minute when I'm doing it, but it's really helpful that I'm kind of every semester helping you kind of stay on track and saying, okay, so what are you doing this summer? Okay, we're not working at Auntie Annie's again. We worked there last summer. I let you do that, but we got to think about something that's going to be productive for you. And I think that's nice, because sometimes you need that push. Some of my students are go-getters on their own, but I think meeting with us regularly, as sometimes hard and hectic as it is, I feel like I'm like a rock star. Like, Dr. Masterson, I got to meet with you. Release me from these classes. But it's really helpful to keep kind of on tab with my advisees regularly. a huge advantage.
And something, again, comparing John Carroll to some other places is an important distinction is that all our faculty are advisors. And so students who come here, their advisors are faculty members. Other places have advising staffs. And I think it's an advantage to have faculty as an advisor because the curriculum is created by the faculty. And so we know, the nuts and bolts. We know maybe even sometimes the loopholes in the curriculum. But we work one-on-one with the students to devise their academic plan and discuss, future career paths, graduate school, whatever, with them. Every faculty member is required to have at least 6 office hours a week. That's the minimum. Most people are available throughout the day. And then you'll have the or by appointment on every syllabus. I find that faculty are very flexible in terms of meeting with students. These are just a sampling of some of our courses. Some of these courses are involved or options within the psych core. For example, child development and social psychology are paired in our group B. Students don't have to take both of them, they can take one. But many students end up taking both. So if, for example, if they take child development and then they take social psychology will be considered an elective then. One of them would be a core class, the other would be elective. Again, they need 6 electives to graduate. We have psychopathology, counseling theory, eating disorders, forensic psychology, industrial organizational psychology, performance evaluation, cognitive science, drugs and behavior, sports psychology, psychology of prejudice, ethics and psychology, psychopharmacology. We mentioned the independent research. Another option is independent readings. Students, and these are usually upper level students, seniors. There's a topic they just want to really dive into. They find a faculty member who's willing to supervise their independent readings, that they agree on a topic, they agree on a schedule, and they do that. And then we also have the practicum internships. One thing that's happening with the new core, there's going to be some changes in majors also. And one of the things that we're doing in psychology is our 200 level courses no longer have a prerequisite of Psych 101. So if you're going to be a psych major, you have to take Psych 101. If you're going to be a psych minor, you have to take Psych 101. Up until this year, Psych 101 was a prerequisite for all classes. Child development, social psychology are taught at the 200 level. So these are lecture-driven courses. They no longer have Psych 101 as a prerequisite. So this will allow students who may not be, interested in taking Psych 101, maybe they don't want to be a psych major, but they're interested in particular areas, they can take those. It also is advantageous. One thing to keep in mind is that in terms of summer classes, we're moving more and more to online classes. A good way for students to get a jump on credits, let's say between high school and college, take an online class. And like in psychology, the 200 level classes no longer have the Psych 101 as the prerequisite. We encourage students to be active in, outside the classroom. We have Psychi is the International Honor Society in Psychology, and Psychology Club, and that is, admittance there is based on GPA, so students who are relatively high achieving can join the Honor Society in Psychology. Psych Club is open to all students, and Nicole, are you still president?
No. Well, I'm the advisor for Psych Club. Then we have our Psych-Hi induction, and it's actually really nice. I unfortunately live on the west side, or I would full throttle have people at my house. I love that kind of stuff, but it's like 45 minutes away. No one's traveling that far. But we used to have it at like a faculty member's house, but we kind of cater a lunch, and we have like a really nice event on campus for the students when they enter Psych-Hi, and we have it's kind of formal, and we take their picture, and they sign the ledger and do all these things, and we read formal things. But it's really a nice thing that we, really prioritize that and honor that process too. Earning really high grades in achievement in psychology is valued here. And so it's really nice. But they're wonderful, these two.
And we'll give them a chance to speak in a moment. In terms of, you want to take over here?
Yeah, these aren't even my research. Yeah, but this is some of the IO, industrial organizational research and internship possibilities. So Automation Plastics, Cleveland Clinic, ERC, Key Bank, Olympic Steel, Playhouse Square. My husband works at Sherwin-Williams. He's had interns there. So that's a great opportunity. In mental health, I have a partnership with the Cleveland Clinic Center for Autism. They do summer internship programs, and these are paid. I mean, it's crazy. They get paid money. They get academic credit. So what happens for these summer internships, which is really a nice advantage too, I keep saying advantage, a nice component of one of the good things we can do is students will do the internship in the summer. The academic credit is placed in the fall. So they did the work in summer, but they take the academic credit in the fall. So you're not like paying for academic credit in the summer, which costs extra money. It kind of can get added to it. And oftentimes it can be 3 credits. That's how many it would be worth. But say you need to take 16 credits, you could do it for 2, so you're not over 18 hours. Just little things like that I can help with advising on. The Monarch Center for Autism at Belfair, the Cleveland Center for Eating Disorder, the Emily's House, foster care internship. There's so many more. I feel like once our students get there, they want them more often. So I have a hard time sometimes filling all of the positions for students. Can you please do this internship for me? So because I think there's just such a need, and the students that we've placed there are really desired. And then we also are partners with the ADHD program at the Cleveland Clinic as well. And so there's a summer treatment program that our students often take part in. So there's just endless possibilities. And we actually just got a grant last year. I was part of that initial grant, and it got renewed. It's called the Great Lakes Career Ready Internship Grant. And so what they were trying to do at John Carroll was awarded this grant, and it provided funding for students to do internships. And then we as faculty had to kind of excavate and find new internships for them. And so that's really evolved. So a lot of these internships that I kind of helped identify last year are still in place this year from that grant. And so it's really been a great thing. Our administration really values experiential learning and applied experiences, both to help you guys figure out what you want to do with your lives, and both, like I said, to build your resume towards getting there. And so I think that's really great. So there's lots of different career paths. I always get a little misty during graduation to see where everyone's going, and it's a great job. I love my job so much. I get to help people kind of achieve what they want to achieve, but I also get to live vicariously through all of them and all the places that they go. So plenty will end up in the workforce. A lot will go with a master's degree in a variety of different areas. Again, a lot of counseling, school psych, what else? Social work, IO, child life, all kinds of different, there's so many, like I said, there's lions and tigers and bears out there for things to do.
That's the most common postgraduate work for our students. And it makes sense because PhD programs are usually difficult to get into. Particularly in clinical psychology, a graduate program might have 3 or 4 slots, and there might be 500 students applying for that. So it is very, very competitive. So master's programs are not as difficult to get into. And, PhDs are a much larger commitment. At the minimum, it's 4 years. Realistically, it's usually 6 or 7. Master's degrees or terminal degrees, it's 2 years and you have a master's. Psychology is one of the areas where if you want to be a practicing psychologist and have the name psychologist attached to your name, you need a master's degree. The only really exception to that, and you wouldn't really be a psychologist, but if you pursue industrial organizational psychology, you might end up in human resource management. An undergraduate degree would be okay there. There's probably a preference at many places for a person to have a master's. In terms of being a psychologist, working as a counselor, you need the master's degree.
So we have lots of good success stories, and they keep coming in every minute. So you can kind of just see some examples. So we've had plenty of students go into PhD programs, social psych, neuroscience, clinical, just tons of, I had one student who just last week got into a PsyD program. lots of master's programs, and there's many more we didn't include. We couldn't possibly have included everyone in there, but even some that I've had plenty of that have gone on to medical school as well, so some people do that route as well.
And psychology is also one of the largest feeders in the law school.
No, that's true too.
Some of our students go to law school. Dr. Swenson, who's on our faculty, she also has a law degree, and she's a pre-law advisor on campus.
And she runs the IRB. She's got many hats, so here's some other jobs.
So these are our graduates
sorry.
taking positions
Sorry.
at those companies.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can kind of open it up to you guys. The rest is kind of lunch and specialized tours, and all kinds of good things. But I really do encourage you to go upstairs on the 3rd floor and see. It's a beautiful space. And actually, we want to introduce our lovely students.
Hi everyone, welcome to campus.
Give them the-
My name is Nicole.
And I'm Brian.
And I'm a senior here, and I'm on the mental health services track.
I'm just general.
But it's interesting because I remember when I was exactly in your place and listening to whoever was talking to us my first year, and I remember being really, really nervous. And between now and then, things have changed so much because I feel like I've grown so much, and specifically I attribute it to John Carroll and the psychology department here, and I'm not just saying that. There are a lot of different opportunities that make John Carroll really distinctive. For the first thing that I can think of is it feels like a community here. So even if you feel like, okay, I can't do math, which is specifically me, I was so worried, and we have to take statistics. But the running joke between me and my friend was we would camp out outside of our math professor's office to make sure we really knew math. So that was something. I know Dr. Yost can tell you I'm always in his office. So your teachers really have office hours, and you really get to know your teachers. I think it's a 20 student ratio, something like that. So that's a really great opportunity. And then the other big thing is, and both Dr. Yost and Dr. Masterson talked about this, but the opportunities for internships. So that really helped me because I started out on the clinical route, and after a couple internships at the Cleveland Clinic and just a couple different places, I realized that now I'm interested in more the experimental side. So even if you are taking these internships because you really love something, but then it could really change your mind about it. So they're so important to get internships. And John Carroll always has something up on the board in the psych department. And if you come for the tours, you can see that, what the opportunities are right now for internships. So there are always those options.
How many of you want to go into psychotherapy, counseling, talk therapy, stuff like that? It's I expect there's more of you out there. But when I got here, I also wanted to come into psychotherapy. But as I got into the research part, I realized that the research isn't as dry and boring as it seems. It is very interesting. I have learned so much, and I would actually say it's thrilling. So I was turned from psychotherapy into experimental as well. And so don't be afraid about doing that, because even if you do still want to go into counseling, talk therapy, stuff like that, you need that background of where the field is going in order to better attend to your patients. It's not all id ego, super ego, Sigmund Freud like I thought it was, but that wasn't a bad thing.
Along with that, there are a lot of opportunities for research. So right off the bat, it's a requirement to take 301, I think as Dr. Yost mentioned. And I was really worried about taking 301, but you get to work in a group. And so even if you're worried about it, you're with other people who can help you along the way. And then it's really up to you if you want to go on then for more research. But by that point, Brian's in 301 right now, you realize how much you get to love it, even if you didn't think you did in the beginning. So these, really getting all these different diverse areas in. I stayed with my mental health services track just to have that background. So yeah, there's a lot of different options.
And then if you guys do decide to go here and you stay within the psychology major, you'll be spending a lot of time in the department. So I just want to challenge you, walk up to the department and walk around, and go to any other department here, and let your opinion be the comparison between the two departments, and that should influence your decision on if you want to go here. I'm going to let it speak for itself.
Are there any questions specifically for the students?
Like neuroscience might be a good track sometimes. I mean, psychiatry is a medical, you know, it's going through medical school. At the pre-health, yeah. I mean, I would say, like, to do psychiatry, it's obviously like you go to medical school. But at the same time, a lot of, it's interesting, I think it's an interesting time to be in psychology because, so they just redid the MCAT to get entry into medical school, and they've added more like psychosocial components to that. So there's a whole section that didn't used to be on there. So we're even thinking about kind of tweaking some of our 101 classes for that. So there's a lot more of an emphasis on these psychological concepts, how to address things like adherence and motivational interviewing and other psychological concepts in there. But I think it's, you know, like our neuroscience track is very much kind of for a pre-med student with that interest in maybe psychiatry, neuroscience, neurology. There's a lot of those prereqs built in there, like a bio, you need to take like bio 1, 2, and 3, and, you know, general chem and organic chemistry and those types of things. But speaking from my own experience, I was a bio major, chem major, and I think psychology and those things enhance one another very nicely. Psychology is becoming more and more biological. It's the things, especially with the disorders, the more and more we know about them, they're so much more genetically loaded and neurologically linked. So I think you have to have some comfort level in all of those things. But we can talk, I mean, you know, if you need more specific.
Piece of advice, if for anyone in this room who is thinking there's even an outside possibility that you might pursue medical school, be sure to take biology, chemistry 1, first semester, whether it's here or wherever you end up going, because at most places, bio 1, chem 1 are taught in the fall, and then bio 2 and chem 2, the following classes are taught in the spring. If you decide, you know, say over Christmas break that you're going to pursue medical school, spring semester you can't take bio 1. You have to wait until the first semester of your sophomore year. So even if you think it's an outside possibility, make sure you take the science courses, you know, your first semester.
And you need a lab course anyway, so it's not like even if you're like, oh wow, I'm in bio, this is horrifying, I know I want to do psychology, you've attained that kind of, that will meet some of your core requirements, so it's not like a lost entity either. But I'd agree with that too, build, yeah. Oh, sure.
Would you be able to help them focus on working within autism?
Oh, yeah.
And then you said you knew some students that did get going to masters.
Yeah, yeah, I do.
Is there would you gear them towards a certain track then in the psychology area?
I would. With speech and language, there are some very specific courses you need to get in that we don't have. There are some. But we've had plenty of students get there. And so sometimes what they do will be to take some of those classes over the summer, or they might take them right before they get in. I feel like sometimes with speech and language, some of our students decide a little later. So yes, there are certain classes it depends on if they want to work with kids. I think the Child and Family Studies track is a good one for that. I have a student right now that I'm advising that's doing kind of the same thing. And so there's some communication classes that she's taking. There's a couple classes that she just needs to take online. And then there's a lot of coursework that she, you know, that fits pretty well in there. So some anatomy classes, but they can take that here. I would say, and also what I would say, something that I'm proud of with my internships is that I let students, I'm not one who says you have to be a junior or senior. If you're good and qualified and you're a freshman or a sophomore, do it. Like, I'm pretty open to that. And so I think that you need to start figuring out what you want to do. Some internships are more exclusive and will say you have to be later. Sometimes you can't get the course credit because you have to be a junior or senior, but I'm very open to people doing them right out of the gate. One of my best interns was a freshman who was just ended up coming through the ranks, so I'm kind of a believer after him, and it was.
Let me add something to that. You mentioned, like, we might not have a speech pathology class on campus, but we have a program. All the nice thing about being located in Cleveland, there are several universities in the area, as well as the Cleveland Institute of Art, Cleveland Institute of Music. We have an agreement with these other universities and colleges where if we don't
Ursula.
offer a class here, students can, using their John Carroll tuition, for example, go to Case or Cleveland State or Cleveland Institute of Music. So if someone wants to take a music class that's not offered here, students are allowed to take one class a semester at another college or university who's part of this
helpful,
program. We had students who, students from Cleveland Institute of Art or Cleveland Institute of Music take, biology classes at John Carroll if that's what they want.
So I know the case must be must have.
Speech and language. Yeah.
If that's around with psychology,
Mm-hmm.
wanted to take how she go, or who she talked about, taking the class case lessons, would you go with you guys, or both of them?
It's through,
Yeah, through her advisor, and then there's a petition form that
yeah,
goes through
the
administration.
transient petition, yeah. And it's pretty,
And it's an online.
it's all electronic.
It's pretty easy.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Because I've had students do that, I kind of, yeah. Go ahead.
I am kind of looking towards working with veterans and
Oh.
traumatic stress.
Uh-huh.
So I was wondering what track would I be looking for to kind of lean towards that factor?
Probably mental health, probably mental health.
Yeah,
I mean, because it's more
we've
service.
had students do internships at the VA hospital, so that would be a nice, match for you.
Yeah. We've actually a really active like veteran services program on campus actually, so that might be a nice marrying of that too. They've won some like awards for their services that they provided, so that's one of the areas that we're kind of,
Because some of the
Already
veterans that return end up coming to John Carroll, so John Carroll does a good job of catering to their needs.
what time is it? I just want to keep us, I know lunch is a priority. Is it 1? It's time, it is time officially. But I will be here, I will not prioritize my lunch and I will prioritize your questions. So come see me kind of, or John, if you have any questions that we can specifically answer. But enjoy your lunch. You guys feel like you know your way. If not, ask some of the students.
We'll be available up on the third floor for
Hi.
tours
Hi,
between
how are
you
you?
and
I'm good.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.